Fewer than 4% of Nobel Prize winners in physics openly describe themselves as atheists in several 20th century surveys. Yet laboratories across Europe and America kept producing theories that seemed to push God farther away from the machinery of the universe. That contradiction became the beginning of a strange life story, not of a person exactly, but of an idea born inside particle accelerators, observatorious war laboratories, philosophy departments, and the exhausted minds of scientists who kept discovering laws precise enough to feel almost intentional. The title sounds like a confession whispered into a microphone after midnight. I'm a scientist. We discovered the truth about God. But the real story is more complicated than revelation, because science did not march in a straight line toward belief or disbelief. It wandered through uncertainty, ego, mathematics, terror, funding battles, Cold War competition, and moments of awe so intense that some researchers struggled to describe them without sounding religious. A lesser-known fact of early 20th century physics is that several major European laboratories quietly maintained reading circles discussing philosophy and theology alongside quantum mechanics, because many researchers believed the new discoveries threatened traditional concepts of causality itself. The birth of this modern search began with a problem. Not a spiritual problem at first, a physics problem. By the late 19th century, scientists believed they were approaching completion of the universe. Newtonian mechanics explained motion. Maxwell explained electromagnetism. Chemistry organized matter into predictable structures. Industry transformed coal, steam, steel, and electricity into proof that human beings could dominate nature through equations. Then tiny cracks appeared. Mercury moved incorrectly around the sun. Light behaved like a wave and a particle. Atoms refused to follow classical rules, a lesser-known detail of pre-quantum physics is that many senior scientists believed only minor refinements remained before all major laws of nature would be solved. A confidence later mocked as one of the great underestimations in scientific history. Those cracks widened into revolutions. Albert Einstein changed gravity from a force into geometry. Quantum mechanics shattered certainty itself. Werner Heisenberg introduced uncertainty not as human ignorance, but as a structural feature of reality. Niels Bohr described atomic behavior in language so strange that philosophers accused physicists of abandoning reason. The universe stopped looking mechanical. It started looking mysterious. Again, that mattered, because for centuries many intellectuals assumed scientific progress would steadily eliminate the need for God. Instead, modern physics created deeper questions. Why did mathematics describe reality so perfectly? Why did physical constants appear balanced precisely enough for stars, chemistry, and life? Why did observation seem connected to measurement at the quantum level? A lesser-known fact of Einstein's correspondence is that he repeatedly used religious language metaphorically when discussing physics, even while rejecting belief in a personal deity. The early parents of this scientific search were not churches, they were universities, military research programs, industrial laboratories, observatories, built on isolated mountains, government's funding, radar nuclear weapons, rocketry, and telecommunications. Ironically, some of the largest advances in understanding the cosmos emerged from systems designed for war. The Manhattan Project accelerated particle physics. Radar research transformed astronomy. Rocket programs developed for missiles later launched space telescopes. The search for God became entangled with the machinery of geopolitics. A lesser-known consequence of World War II research funding is that physics departments in the United States expanded dramatically after the war, creating entire generations of cosmologists and particle physicists who would dominate late 20th century theories about the origin of the universe. At first, the scientific story of creation looked hostile to religion. Charles Darwin already destabilized literal interpretations of Genesis in the 19th century. Fossils stretched Earth's age into unimaginable timescales. Evolution suggested life emerged through natural selection rather than direct intervention. Then astronomy expanded the scale of the universe, itself not thousands of stars, billions, not one galaxy, trillions human beings, shrank. That shrink and frighten people. A lesser known detail of early public reaction to deep space astronomy is that some newspapers described the expanding universe as psychologically dangerous because it appeared to erase human significance. But then came another surprise. The universe had a beginning. This idea sounds ordinary today because generations grew up hearing about the Big Bang. In the 1920s and 1930s, it sounded radical. Many scientists preferred an eternal universe because eternal systems required no moment of creation. Then observations of galactic redshift suggested expansion. If the universe was expanding backward through time, it became smaller, hotter, denser, eventually. The equations pointed toward an origin. Georges Lemaitre, a Belgian physicist and Catholic priest, proposed what he called the primeval atom. The irony was extra. A priest helped formulate one of modern cosmology's foundational theories. A lesser-known fact of early Big Bang debates is that some scientists initially resisted the theory partly because it sounded too compatible with religious creation. Fred Hoyle mocked the idea during a radio broadcast in 1949. He called it the Big Bang. The name survived, his opposition did not. Evidence accumulated, cosmic microwave background. Radiation appeared in 1965. Abundance ratios of hydrogen and helium matched predictions. Observations of deep space strengthened expansion models. The universe suddenly looked less eternal and more contingent. That word became important. Contingent meaning things could have been otherwise. A lesser-known detail of the discovery of cosmic microwave background radiation is that the signal was initially mistaken for interference, caused by pigeon droppings inside a radio antenna. This was the childhood phase of the idea, confused, unstable, misunderstood. Scientists were not discovering proof of God, they were discovering a universe far stranger than classical materialism predicted. Quantum mechanics deepened the confusion. Particles existed in probability states, entanglement linked distance systems, observation appeared mathematically inseparable from measurement outcomes. Popular culture exaggerated these findings endlessly, but even careful physicists admitted discomfort. Richard Feynman famously stated that nobody truly understands quantum mechanics. A lesser-known training detail of mid-century physics education is that many graduate students learned operational mathematics successfully while privately admitting confusion about what the equations meant philosophically. Different interpretations emerged. Some scientists concluded consciousness played a special role. Others rejected that completely. Some argued quantum theory suggested hidden layers of reality. Others insisted the equations required no metaphysical interpretation at all. The argument became less about data and more about meaning. And meaning is where religion always waits. A lesser-known psychological pattern documented among elite researchers is that exposure to highly abstract theories sometimes increased spiritual reflection even among scientists who remained formally non-religious. During the Cold War, the life of this idea entered adolescence. Competition between superpowers poured money into cosmology, mathematics, aerospace engineering, and computing. Space exploration transformed public imagination. Photographs of Earth from orbit alter human self-perception almost instantly. The famous Earthrise photograph from Apollo 8 showed a small blue sphere floating in darkness. Some astronauts described spiritual reactions, others described existential shock. Several struggled to explain the emotional effect at all are lesser known. Fact of NASA's psychological reports is that mission planners underestimated the profound emotional reactions astronauts would experience when viewing Earth from deep space. At the same time, biology advanced rapidly. DNA structure was discovered in 1953. Genetics expanded. Molecular biology transformed medicine. Too many observers. Life looked increasingly explainable, without divine intervention. Yet another contradiction emerged. The deeper scientists examined biology, the more complex life appeared. Protein folding, cellular, machinery, genetic regulation, immune systems, the sheer density of information inside living systems. Stunned researchers, a lesser-known design compromise of early DNA research is that computing limitations severely slowed genomic analysis for decades, forcing scientists to rely on fragmented interpretation long before full sequencing became practical. Some religious thinkers adapted. Instead of arguing against evolution, they argued evolution itself reflected deeper order. Others rejected modern science entirely. The split widened. Science and religion stopped being one argument. They became thousands. By the 1970s and 1980s, cosmology entered rapid growth. Inflation theory attempted to explain why the universe appeared geometrically flat and remarkably uniform across enormous distances. Particle accelerators probed smaller scales of matter. Computers simulated galaxy formation. The universe started looking mathematically fine-tuned. Tiny changes in physical constants would prevent stars, chemistry, or stable matter. Gravity slightly stronger, universe collapses rapidly, electromagnetic force altered, atoms fail, nuclear resonance shifted, carbon production, inside stars collapses. A lesser-known calculation from astrophysics suggests even small variations in certain constants would dramatically reduce the possibility of long-lived stars, capable of supporting planetary systems. This became one of the defining moments in the life story of the idea.fine-tuning.religious. Thinkers seized upon it immediately. Some scientists became uncomfortable because the numbers genuinely appeared improbable. Others proposed a multiverse. If enough universes exist, eventually one will support life. Critics argued the multiverse sounded less testable than theology. The debate intensified. A lesser-known detail of early inflationary theory is that several versions predicted wildly different types of universes, complicating efforts to test the models directly. The public often misunderstood these debates. Television simplified everything into binary conflict, science versus God, reason versus faith. Reality was messier. Many scientists believed in some form of spirituality. Many religious scholars accepted evolution and cosmology. Most actual arguments centered around consciousness, causality, morality, and origins rather than simplistic denial of evidence. A lesser-known sociological fact is that rates of religious belief among scientists varied dramatically by discipline, country, and generation, rather than following a single global pattern. Then consciousness moved to the center. This was where the story became dangerous, because consciousness remains one of the least understood features of reality. Brains process information electrically and chemically. That much is measurable, but subjective experience itself remains difficult to explain. Why should matter feel like anything from the inside? Why does awareness exist at all? The hard problem of consciousness entered philosophy and neuroscience with enormous force during the late 20th century. A lesser-known limitation of brain imaging technology is that scans reveal correlation patterns of activity, but do not directly explain the emergence of subjective experience. Some researchers argued consciousness would eventually reduce entirely to computation. Others suspected something fundamental was missing: quantum consciousness. Theories emerged on the fringes. Integrated information theory attempted mathematical models. Philosophers debated materialism, dualism, panpsychism, and emergent systems. The search for God increasingly migrated from astronomy into consciousness. Not because scientists found proof, because they kept hitting explanatory walls. A lesser known, training reality of neuroscience laboratories is that many researchers specialize intensely in narrow systems without claiming broad, philosophical conclusions about consciousness itself. Meanwhile, near-death experiences attracted public fascination. Cardiac arrest survivors described tunnels, lights, detached observation, overwhelming peace. Some doctors dismiss these as neurological artifacts caused by oxygen deprivation, neurotransmitter surges, or memory reconstruction. Others admitted certain reports remain difficult to categorize cleanly. Studies expanded, data accumulated. Consensus remained elusive. A lesser-known medical detail is that measurable brain activity can persist briefly after cardiac arrest, complicating simplistic definitions of the exact boundary between clinical death and irreversible death. Then came artificial intelligence, and suddenly humanity confronted a new possibility. Could consciousness itself be engineered? If machines became self-aware, religious and philosophical assumptions would face enormous pressure. Computing power exploded after the 1990s. Neural networks evolved from limited research tools into systems capable of language generation, pattern recognition, image creation, and strategic gameplay beyond human levels in certain domains. Some scientists predicted consciousness would emerge from sufficient complexity. Others warned simulation of intelligence might not equal awareness. A lesser-known limitation of early AI systems is that many depended heavily on narrow statistical optimization. Despite public portrayals suggesting human-like understanding, the life story of this idea kept changing shape. At times it resembled theology, at times physics, at times computer science, at times psychology. The central question evolved to not merely does God exist, but what kind of universe produces minds capable of asking that question. During the early 21st century, cosmology reached another peak. Space telescopes mapped background radiation with extraordinary precision. Planet-hunting missions discovered thousands of exoplanets. Gravitational waves were detected directly in 2015, confirming predictions of general relativity made a century earlier. The mathematical elegance of the universe appeared almost absurdly effective. Equations developed on chalkboards predicted phenomena billions of light years away. That effectiveness haunted many scientists. A lesser-known fact of gravitational wave detection is that the distortions measured were smaller than the width of a proton across multi-collimeter instruments. At this peak moment, public culture exploded with declarations. Some atheists announced science had buried God permanently. Some believers announced science had proven divine design. Both claims exceeded available evidence. Actual science remained narrower and more careful. Scientists discovered mechanisms, patterns, constraints, mathematical relationships. Whether those implied, God remained interpretation. A lesser-known issue of science communication is that media interviews often compress nuanced scientific positions into simplistic ideological narratives. Still, certain discoveries genuinely shocked researchers. The cosmological constant problem revealed vacuum energy estimates catastrophically mismatched observed reality. Dark matter appeared to outweigh visible matter several times over. Dark energy seemed to accelerate cosmic expansion. Human beings realized they barely understood most of the universe. Visible matter might represent only about 5% of total cosmic content. That realization humbled many scientists, profoundly array lesser-known challenge in dark matter research is that decades of experiments have repeatedly failed to identify definitive particle candidates despite enormous investment. Then there was mathematics itself. Why should abstract equations invented in psi Human minds describe external reality so accurately, physicist Eugene Wigner called it the unreasonable effectiveness of mathematics. Some interpreted this as evidence of deep order. Others argued human cognition evolved precisely to model patterns. The mystery remained. A lesser-known detail of theoretical physics is that many elegant mathematical models ultimately fail experimentally despite their internal beauty. At the height of this intellectual expansion, some scientists began speaking publicly in ways that sounded almost theological. Not preaching, wondering. Theoretical physicist Paul Davies discussed cosmic intelligibility. Francis Collins, leader of the Human Genome Project, openly defended religious belief. Astrophysicists debated anthropic principles. Philosophers of mind argued about the limits of reductionism. The public interpreted these discussions emotionally, but inside academia, caution dominated, because scientific careers depend on evidence, not revelation. A lesser-known professional reality is that researchers making grand metaphysical claims risk reputational damage if they appear to exceed empirical evidence. The defining battlefield of this idea was never a literal battlefield. It was a debate arena between reductionism and meaning. Reductionism argued everything ultimately reduces to physical interactions. Meaning argued some aspects of existence resist total reduction. The fight spread across universities, podcasts, conferences, books, documentaries, and internet forums. One side warned religion obstructed scientific progress historically. The other warned purely mechanistic worldviews stripped humanity of moral grounding. A lesser-known effect of online debate culture is that extreme positions often gain disproportionate visibility compared to more nuanced scientific and philosophical perspectives. The idea reached peak intensity during the New Atheist era after 2001. Public intellectuals like Richard Dawkins, Sam Harris, Christopher Hitchens, and Daniel Dennett argued religion caused violence, irrationality, and resistance to evidence. Their books sold millions. Religious philosophers and scientists responded aggressively. Debates filled theaters. Television networks packaged intellectual conflict like sport. The question of God became commercially successful again. A lesser-known publishing detail is that sales of religion and science books surged significantly during periods of public anxiety after major geopolitical shocks. But beneath the spectacle, working scientists continued ordinary research, calibrating instruments, checking error, bars running simulations. Most did not believe they were discovering God. They believed they were discovering structure. The distinction mattered enormously. Science measures regularities, religion searches for ultimate meaning. Sometimes those searches overlap, sometimes they collide. A lesser-known laboratory reality is that highly specialized research often advances through incremental improvements, too small to attract public attention despite later becoming foundational. Then came the cost. Not financial cost alone, though the numbers were enormous. Particle colliders cost billions. Space telescopes consumed decades. Genome projects required international coordination. The deeper cost was psychological. Scientists, confronting ultimate questions, often experienced isolation. Public audiences demanded certainty. Actual research produced ambiguity. A lesser-known mental health issue in academic science is the high prevalence of anxiety and burnout among researchers. Working in hyper-competitive environments with unstable funding, there was also social cost. Scientists discussing spirituality risked accusations of abandoning rigor. Religious thinkers accepting evolutional cosmology risked accusations of compromise. Moderate positions satisfied almost nobody. The argument polarized because polarization attracts attention. Nuance rarely does. A lesser-known institutional pressure in academia is that controversial public statements can influence grant opportunities, departmental politics, and media treatment. The human body paid costs to dot long observatory shifts, damaged sleep cycles. Radiation environments affected some aerospace. Research personnel, laboratory stress, reshaped lives. Several major physicists struggled with depression, relationship collapse, or emotional exhaustion while pursuing theories about reality itself. The search for cosmic truth was not serene. It was often brutal. A lesser-known detail of early observatory work is that astronomers historically endured extreme cold, isolation, and altitude sickness during long observational campaigns. Then the story entered old age, not because the questions disappeared, because certainty weakened by the 2010s and 2020s. Many scientists became more cautious about grand declarations. String theory remained unconfirmed. Multiverse ideas proved difficult to test. Consciousness resisted reduction. Artificial intelligence advanced rapidly without resolving awareness. The universe looked increasingly understandable in parts, yet fundamentally mysterious in total. A lesser-known criticism within theoretical physics is that some models became so mathematically flexible they risked drifting beyond experimental verification. Public discourse shifted too. Younger generations often showed less interest in rigid ideological warfare between science and religion. Instead, discussions focused on meaning, mental health, ethics of AI, environmental collapse, and existential risk. The question changed again. Not, can science destroy God? But can human civilization survive its own technological power without some deeper framework of value? A lesser-known finding from surveys of younger researchers is growing concern about ethical governance of advanced technologies rather than purely metaphysical debates. Climate science intensified this shift. The planet itself became evidence of interconnected systems beyond simple economic logic. Ecological collapse, biodiversity loss, and atmospheric instability forced scientists into moral language whether they wanted it or not. Data alone no longer felt sufficient. People demanded meaning, responsibility, direction, A lesser-known operational challenge of climate modeling is that uncertainty ranges can be politically exploited even when underlying trends remain scientifically robust. Artificial intelligence accelerated the pressure. If intelligence can be replicated artificially, what defines humanity? If consciousness emerges from computation, what becomes of soul? If machines surpass human reasoning in many domains, where does meaning reside? Scientists found themselves returning repeatedly to philosophical territory they once dismissed. A lesser-known technical limitation of modern AI systems is their vulnerability to hallucination, bias propagation, and hidden training data distortions. Despite impressive performance, this is where the title finally reveals its deeper truth. I'm a scientist. We discovered the truth about God is not really a story about proving or disproving divinity. It is the biography of humanity discovering the limits of explanation. Every generation believed final answers were close, then reality widened again. Newton explained motion, then relativity changed space-time. Quantum mechanics shattered certainty. Cosmology revealed beginnings. Biology revealed complexity. Neuroscience revealed mystery inside awareness. AI revealed uncertainty about intelligence itself. A lesser-known historical pattern in science is that major breakthroughs often increase the number of unanswered questions rather than reducing them cleanly. The legacy of this idea spread everywhere. Modern physics reshaped philosophy, evolution reshaped theology, neuroscience altered criminal law and ethics, cosmology transformed public imagination, space photography influenced environmental movements, computing changed how humans think about consciousness. Even people with no religious belief inherited questions created by these discoveries. A lesser-known cultural effect of Apollo-era imagery is its contribution to global environmental awareness through visualization of Earth as a fragile shared system. Later scientific systems copied important lessons. Interdisciplinary collaboration became essential. No single field could answer the deepest questions alone. Physicists needed mathematicians, biologists needed computing, neuroscientists needed psychology, philosophers returned to discussions once dominated entirely by religion. The boundaries blurred. A lesser-known organizational shift in major research institutions is the expansion of cross-disciplinary centers studying consciousness, ethics, and complex systems together. Military planners learned lessons too. A lesser-known organizational shift in major research institutions is the expansion of cross-disciplinary centers studying consciousness, ethics, and complex systems together. Military planners learned lessons too. Cold War funding demonstrated that geopolitical competition could accelerate scientific discovery dramatically. Governments increasingly treated scientific leadership as strategic power. Space programs became tools of prestige. Quantum computing became a national security issue. AI became an arms race. Ironically, the search for ultimate truth remained connected to conflict from beginning to end. A lesser known intelligence concern surrounding advanced computing research involves fears of cryptographic disruption if large-scale quantum systems become practical. The public learns something uncomfortable as well. Science is not a machine producing certainty. It is a process producing refinement. Theories evolve, models fail, evidence accumulates unevenly. Consensus changes. Many people mistook uncertainty for weakness. Scientists understood uncertainty as honesty. A lesser-known educational issue is that public misunderstanding of scientific uncertainty often fuels distrust during crises. Religious communities changed. Too, some hardened against science. Others adapted deeply. Entire branches of theology integrated cosmology, evolution, and neuroscience into updated frameworks. The old war narrative between science and faith survived, mostly because it remained emotionally dramatic. Reality stayed more complex. A lesser-known demographic trend shows substantial variation in acceptance of evolution and cosmology among different religious traditions worldwide. In the end, the truth about God discovered by science was not a laboratory. Measurement not a hidden equation not a particle, not a signal from deep space. It was something stranger. Human beings are capable of understanding enough of the universe to transform civilizations, yet incapable of fully escaping mystery. The deeper science looked, the larger reality became, and every enlargement forced the same ancient response. Wondered a lesser-known observation from surveys of elite scientists is that many describe all humility and intellectual beauty as central motivations for their work regardless of personal belief systems. That may be the quiet moral line at the end of the biography. The search never really discovered God in the way headlines promise. What it discovered was a limitation. And perhaps that limitation is why the question survives every telescope, every collider, every genome map, every supercomputer, and every century of argument. Because the closer humanity came to the machinery of existence, the more the machinery itself began to resemble a doorway rather than a conclusion.